You're tuned into the Counterflow Podcast, home of dissident voices,
unapproved opinions.
But you gotta get ready.
You ready?
Now here's your host
and humble narrator,
Buck Johnson. Let's go.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back once again to the Counterflow Podcast. As always, I am your host and humble narrator, Buck Johnson, coming to you out of Lockhart, Texas. I appreciate all the kind words about the episode last week with Father John Valadez. Turns out y'all like him as much as I do. I appreciate it. Thank you for the comments. Also on the new intro, of course, my man Mano from the Study of Stuff podcast, Postfeedum, did that soundtrack, and my guy Dan Smots over at Dissident Media did the video, and I'm very happy with the final product. Sounds like you guys were too. I appreciate the kind words. On to this episode. For the first time, Father Joshua Genig is on the show. We have been chatting, messaging back and forth. He had some kind words to say about the show, and after I inquired about his history and his parish up there in Michigan, I thought, you sound, sir, like a very good guest to get on the show, and he agreed to do that. It is the first time he's been on. It will definitely not be the last because, as you're going to see here, he's great. This whole discussion is very good. We get on catechism, baptism, Zionism, challenges with families in the church. His journey itself is fascinating. Before coming into the Orthodox Church, Father Joshua was a Lutheran minister and associate professor of theology at 2 Roman Catholic seminaries. He's offered several academic monographs, articles, and papers. Father Joshua is married to Matushka Abigail, a middle school English teacher, and they are blessed with 6 daughters. I believe that just went up, as you're going to find out in this interview. He received a BA in Religious Studies from Concordia University, his MDiv in Theology from Concordia Theological Seminary, his PhD in Systematic Theology from the University of St. Andrews, UK. Basically, this guy is really good. His parish looks beautiful. Go check out their parish at saintinnocentchurch.com. Up there in the cold, cold land of Michigan. For the first time on the show, Father Joshua Genig, welcome to the show, sir. How are you?
I'm well, thank God. How are you?
I'm doing quite well. I'm excited to do this interview. I wasn't familiar with you until I was, and now I'm like, I should have had this guy on a long time ago.
Wonderful. It's good to be here.
Yes. It's your first time, so I'll let you tell the folks anything that you think they would find pertinent as to who you are, what you do, and we can take this all kinds of directions.
Absolutely. Let me tell you just kind of the elevator pitch on where I've been and how I got to where I am right now, and maybe that'll spark further conversation. Like many people, frankly, in the Orthodox Church, in the American context, at least today, I'm a convert to Orthodoxy. So my family and I converted over a decade ago. I grew up in a very traditional, conservative, socially conservative, politically conservative, and religiously conservative Lutheran house. And I spent all of my childhood, much of my adult life in the Lutheran Church. I was part of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, which is one of the denominations of Lutheranism, but by far, I would say at least, the most traditional and most kind of liturgically minded. Much of my family remains Lutheran to this day, so we still retain very good relationships with folks that were in our past and remain in our family now. I think most importantly, I have a wonderful wife, Matushka Abigail. So she's, of course, has the title for a priest's wife, and we just had our 7th daughter 2 weeks ago.
That's right.
So,
that's right.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah. So I think we were gonna have this conversation a couple of weeks ago. And I have wonderful girls. Everybody asks what are their ages. I always forget. The oldest is 18 and the youngest is 14 days.
Wow.
So everywhere in between. But we've been very blessed. And I serve at St. Innocent of Irkutsk, who is a Siberian Russian missionary bishop. I serve at St. Innocent of Irkutsk Russian Orthodox Church in Redford, Michigan. And so I'm sitting in my office and the window's to my right, and the street next to us is the edge of the city of Detroit, if that gives any context to where we are. And we are one of the unique parishes here because we're actually part of the Moscow Patriarchate. So we're not ROCOR, we are not OCA, but we're one of a group of about 40 parishes that when the OCA was formed, they were given the option of staying directly under Moscow, and that's what we are here. So we have a vicar bishop who at the time now lives in London. We've had all sorts of visa issues getting him over here given the political situation. But my real ruling hierarch is the Patriarch of Moscow himself. So we are a parish that's under his personal care and protection.
Okay. I didn't know about that until I heard you on another a show. How, I assume, and forgive my ignorance, y'all are in communion with ROCOR?
Precisely. Yes, exactly right. So when ROCOR came back into communion with Moscow, over a decade ago, it was coming back in communion with our churches as well. So we have a very good relationship with ROCOR. To be honest with you, most people get us confused for each other. They think we are ROCOR.
Yes.
Because we're just a small minority here in America. But yes, we are fully part of the Russian church and part of the canonical jurisdictions here in America.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
How many parishioners at your church?
Great question. That has been changing rapidly over the last couple of years. Yeah.
Yes.
So I've been a priest here now going on 8 years. I came here actually as a subdeacon and was ordained a deacon shortly after that and a priest shortly after that. I would say in the last 8 years, we've gone from maybe 25 people coming to church regularly, maybe 40 total parishioners, to now most weeks are upwards of 90 people coming to church.
Double.
So thank God we've got right now one official catechumen, a scad of inquirers who will be made catechumens very soon. I like to take that process slowly. I think it's important that, people are catechumens or at least attending for at least a year, before they're officially brought into the church. There are exceptions, of course, but the times where it's gone badly for me, it's when I brought people in too quickly. So we've got about, like Forgiveness Sunday this past week, I think there were 94 or 95 people here.
Wow.
Most weeks, and I think you'll appreciate this, most weeks there are, 30 to 35 kids under the age of 12.
Love it.
So lots of noise. My wife's a teacher, and that helps. She calms me down when it gets loud, and she says, listen, they're only going to be this age for a little while. But it's really, we're in such a wonderful parish with wonderful people that's growing very rapidly, thank God.
Yes. And you shouldn't get annoyed by that because it sounds to me like at least a third of them are your kids.
Bingo. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's right. There's a good chance if someone's making noise, it's in all likelihood one of mine.
Right.
Yes.
The explosion that you've seen, I was part of it at mine. So I can't say I've necessarily seen it at mine. I was part of that at mine. And thank God we are moving in. We had the back third of a building that was divided up, and now we are getting the front 2/3 as well.
Oh, wow.
So we're hoping to have that to serve Pascha will be the first service that we have. And it will go, if we have 30 people, it feels a little on the tight side.
Absolutely.
So all of a sudden, it might feel like, wow, we need some more people once we get in there.
Exactly. It's a good problem to have,
it
though.
is.
It is. Right.
You said something about the importance of catechism. And I went to Mount Athos this past summer with Father Peter Heers and some other people that he was generous enough to take us over there. And one of the points he was making through the long up and down the mountain walks that we would have is we all are aware there's an explosion of Orthodoxy. And his worry is that some parishes are going to rush people through, and he's trying to emphasize the importance of proper catechism.
Yes.
He, of course, is also trying to emphasize the importance of actually being baptized when they come in. And his worry is that there's going to be an attitude of some parishes to maybe play easy. There's a mindset, I think, of some priests at certain areas. I don't want to make this too hard for someone because then it'll turn them away. Yeah. I don't want to knock down too harshly their Protestant proclivities or their Catholic proclivities or anything they've learned. And instead of saying like, look, they're here because they don't want what they were coming from.
Exactly right.
We need to do proper catechism. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I think his perspective is spot on, and it's one that we've really embraced here. I mean, this is not like picking a restaurant for lunch. This is salvation. This is life and death. It's spiritual battle. Literally, I tell my people here, what happens in the temple is a matter of life and death. And so we're very careful about, people come in very eager, especially in today's context. And they come in and they want to be baptized right away, and they want to be receiving communion right away. And, unless that seed takes root, it's the parable of the sower, unless that seed takes root, when the next wind comes of whatever the next phase in life is or the next fad, they'll be someplace else. And so because it is a matter of life and death, I think we have a responsibility to make sure that folks know the battle they are entering into. I mean, we say in the prayers that at baptism, make them warriors of Christ Jesus. This is a battle. And some people think this is like a day at the spa. I like how it smells. I like how it looks. The food is good. People are very friendly. If that's the level to which people get, they will never be faithful Orthodox Christians. And so I agree with Father Peter, and I think the parishes that will remain strong beyond whatever is happening right now are the ones that are doing proper catechesis, taking their time. I mean, for goodness sakes, the model in the early church is 3 years. I think that's a pretty good model. I will admit, not many people, given how dry and chaotic and evil the external world is, are able to wait 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
But I have not had a person yet say to me, when I say to them, this is about a year-long process. And if you enter midstream, it might be longer than a year.
Mm-hmm.
Never had one person say to me, I'm going someplace else. I have had, interestingly, people come here who were catechumens at other churches. And when I ask, tell me your process, how did you come to find Orthodoxy? How did you enter into the catechumenate? A handful of them have said, I met the priest the first Sunday. The next Sunday, he said, would you like to be a catechumen?
Oh my.
And that to me is, we actually here have put into place, they're not rules, but sort of the standard of coming into the church that we've modeled after St. Andrew, where Father Josiah Trenum is.
Mm-hmm.
That, this is, if you come and just see us, that's just inquiring. But, if you want to be a catechumen, we're engaged to be married. And so we're going to take this seriously, and we're praying exorcism prayers over you. And if something happens, God forbid, and you lose your life, you'll get an Orthodox funeral. So the stakes are high just to be a catechumen. And with that, we expect that you're going, I say it very openly here, you're going to attend all the services. If you're not willing to commit to coming to vigil, to coming to liturgy every week, you're not ready to be Orthodox.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to come to the services. You're not going to fast a full fast, but you're going to begin to enter into the fast with us. I say to people up front, you're going to work toward a biblical tithe. This is the way the Bible speaks. This is going to be your first and only love. And I think most people today, if they've taken the time to come to the Orthodox Church, especially with so many fractured families in Protestantism and Catholicism, they actually want a priest in a parish that takes this seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And I think most people, I don't know the percentage, but probably over 90% have not batted an eye and in fact would say to me, Father, however long it takes, I will do it. I just want to be Orthodox someday. And to me, those are all the right things to be said.
Yes. The humility behind that symptom.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
I want to tell you guys about a cause near and dear to my heart. Dear sweet Lily does not have that much longer to live. She listens to this show. She attends Father Turbo's church. Her dad, Alex, is a personal friend of mine, has been a guest on this show multiple times, a spiritual son of Father Turbo himself. What's happened here, I'm going to kind of give you the story. It's very sad, and yet Lily is just a true badass, pushing bravely through this trial and tribulation in her life with Christ's help. She's a talented, amazing, sweet, and kind-hearted 18-year-old who has courageously fought an excruciatingly painful and difficult battle with osteosarcoma over the past few years. Her journey initially started with cancer in her knee. Basically, what happened after that is it metastasized somewhat, and they had to amputate Lily's right leg above the knee. Yet she embraced each new challenge with courage and determination of someone more than twice her age, more than 5 times her age as far as I'm concerned. probably much more bravely than I could do it myself. Her fortitude continues to inspire all of us as we watch her learn to navigate with one leg and valiantly work through all the emotions and mobility challenges of a teenage amputee. And folks, as if this were not enough, the unthinkable has happened at a recent scan where we have learned that the cancer has metastasized to her lungs, where it is growing rapidly. Over 50% of Lily's lungs are full of cancer now, and she has been given only a short time left to live. While grappling with this harsh reality, the family is striving to savor their last moments together with Lily with joy, the love of Christ, and hope in the Lord. And what they are going to do now, they want to commemorate Lily by building a memorial chapel in her name in Northwest Missouri that will, God willing, serve that community and family, and honoring Lily, serve their brothers and sisters in Christ, and of course, most importantly, honor God. Thank you guys so much for any contributions you were able to make. We are fully committed to making this a reality, and with y'all's help, it truly means a lot to myself, the Brasco family, Father Turbo, Lily herself, the community of Father Turbo's church. May this be blessed. What you can do is go to givesendgo.com/Lily's Legacy. That's GIVESENDGO.com/Lily's Legacy, and that's LILYSLEGACY. I will include a link to that in the show notes page for this episode. If you're watching this on YouTube, it's got the link there on the screen. Please give to this cause. It's beautiful. It's full of love. Father Turbo's blessing, the bishop's blessing. We love dear sweet Lily on this show. What a courageous blessing she has been to everyone who's known her. Thank you guys. Up there, I've never actually been to Michigan.
Oh yeah.
I'm down here in Texas. If someone says I'm a convert, very often it's I was evangelical or Baptist or some sort of Southern type Protestant. Up there, what is the convert usually coming from?
Yeah, I would say up here, a good number of Protestants. This is sort of the Midwest area is full of Lutherans and Baptists and evangelicals and Reformed. We're not far from kind of Dutch Reformed territory on the western side of the state of Michigan. Okay. There's Calvin College out there, very strong Reformed roots.
Okay.
I would say in the Detroit area, a good majority, if they are converting from another denomination, they would probably be Roman Catholic.
That's what I figured. Okay.
Exactly. Now, I will say, in the last 2 years, almost all of the people coming into this parish, at least, maybe were born and raised Catholic, but for a great majority of their life fell into, yoga, satanic things.
Yep.
And they're coming here not as Catholics. They're coming here as unbelievers.
Right.
And so the questions that we are addressing, the things we're talking about are completely different than 5 years ago.
Wow. Okay.
Yes.
Well, let me ask you about Lutheranism. I know. So real quickly, as to not bore my listeners who already know this, I grew up Protestant and went to a mega church through my high school years with a pastor that's kind of famous. I would say he's the most famous Zionist mouthpiece that's not a politician, named John Hagee.
Oh,
and
yes, yeah.
So I didn't know, and then I was an atheist. That gave me some roots of understanding certain things of Christianity, but not very deep ones. And so, in my rebellious nature, what I thought was that I became an atheist for probably 20 years. I don't know much about Lutheranism, except for my mother grew up that way and was raised that way when she was a kid. And so when I became Orthodox, she said, "So that creed you have, we had a creed, and when I was Lutheran, it's kind of similar to that, and I think we had liturgy." And I was like, "Really?" Because liturgical worship was new to me. It's like I was in a mega church with bad music and the pastor yelling. So I assume, and now I know from doing my own studies and then hearing you elsewhere, it is there are some similarities to the Orthodox faith, basically. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Lutheranism today is becoming more and more fractured. So I think probably when your mom grew up, There was way more continuity in terms of liturgical piety, how clergy dressed, for example, how the services were handled. I think my generation, and I'm 42, my generation was on kind of the beginning of the end of that era. And so I jokingly say it was my parents' generation who said, our kids really want contemporary worship.
Okay.
What was actually true was they wanted contemporary worship. We didn't.
Mm-hmm.
But this is how they pitched it for a whole generation of adults. But I think at its core, Lutheranism, frankly, Lutheranism is defined by not being Catholic. Martin Luther, of course, breaks off from the Catholic Church. People debate what the dialogue was like, but the successors to Martin Luther clearly had dialogue with the Patriarch of Constantinople about some of their similarities in belief. Now, at the end of the day, we are very different, but the fact that, it's a creedal denomination, they have a creed, they recite the Nicene Creed, clearly the Western version of that, but they recite the creed. There is an intrinsic liturgical piety. There's a history of fasting, very much, pro-life, pro-mother, pro-baby. So these things are, I find, easy bridges for people. If they already believe baptism saves you, right? They already believe water baptism matters. We can debate whether or not it's quote unquote valid, but they believe that they have Christ's body and blood. So it's a much easier gap than your average Reformed Christian, Baptist, that kind of thing. The roots are there for someone to, I think, easily become Orthodox from Lutheranism.
And how did you make that jump and why?
Yeah, great question. So I was born and raised Lutheran, as I said. I went to Lutheran elementary school. I went to actually a Roman Catholic high school, but parochial. I went to Lutheran University. I went to Lutheran Seminary. And when I was finishing Lutheran Seminary, I was accepted into a PhD program in England. And it was really in that doctoral work that I began to read the Church Fathers, Cyril of Jerusalem, the catechetical lectures, seeing the liturgical life of early Christians. And concurrent with that, I was ordained a Lutheran minister. The parish that I served was in Wheaton, Illinois. So if you know anything about Billy Graham went to Wheaton College.
Yes.
He is a hero there. And we were, one block down the road from Wheaton College and the Billy Graham Center. But we were the only liturgical church in town. The Catholics were less liturgical than we were. The evangelicals clearly were. The Anglicans had all sorts of issues. Ironically, there was an Orthodox Church there, but at the time I didn't know about it. But as I was a Lutheran, having grown up with these kind of very blue blood Lutheran roots, I took my ordination as a Lutheran pastor very seriously. And I began to question in reading the Church Fathers whether or not I, as a Lutheran, without any bishops with apostolic succession, had any real connection to the apostles. And if I didn't, then I was, for lack of a better phrase, playing dress up.
Mm-hmm.
We, this will give you a sense of the kind of liturgical piety of the Lutheran churches I served. The first church I served, we flew to Rome and we spent $35,000 on vestments. Mm-hmm. So we took this seriously. We went to the Pope's tailor, actually. This was like, for us, this was everything.
Yeah.
But if there was no connection to the apostle, then what were we doing? It wasn't a Eucharist. I wasn't a real priest. And that kept me awake almost every night for about 6 or 7 years. And I think I realized I couldn't be a Lutheran pastor anymore. And the natural progression, I thought, was to become Roman Catholic.
Sure.
I had a PhD. I got a job teaching at a Catholic seminary back in Michigan where I had grown up. And the first Sunday we went to a Catholic mass, it was worse than the Lutheran churches I had served.
Mm.
And I remember thinking, what have we done? I gave up a salary, health insurance, a house. I've moved my family from Atlanta, Georgia, back to Michigan with 3 little kids. What are we going to do? And I said to my wife, I've read about the Church Fathers. Let's go visit an Orthodox church. This was after 6 or 7 weeks of finding nothing in Catholicism. I'll never forget it. We went to this church in downtown Detroit, gated parking lot, kind of a bit of a sketchy area. But the minute we opened the door, I could smell the incense.
Mm-hmm.
And it was as though I had entered a different reality. And looking back, I had entered paradise. Yeah. And looking back, it was okay. It wasn't wonderful. It wasn't perfect. But leaving, I said to my wife as we got in the car, we're going to be Orthodox. And it took several months. We thank God we found an Orthodox priest who himself had been a Lutheran pastor. We knew him very well. I had no idea he was in our area until this process had started. And we were catechized like everybody else. And we were brought into the church then. But it was really, I think it was the questioning of my own ordination. And it was also finding a real discontinuity in liturgical life in the Lutheran denomination. We were very liturgical. I mean, we had a 7-foot icon hanging above the altar. Very liturgical.
Okay.
But you would go down the road and they'd have a praise band. And so if the ancient axiom is correct, lex orandi, lex credendi, the way you pray is the way you believe, we were praying differently than everybody else. So we didn't believe the same thing. And the beauty of Orthodoxy is you can have a bad homily, you can have a bad choir, but you've got the same liturgy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I believe I even heard you call this on another podcast a crisis of consciousness.
Oh,
and were you of the church fathers you were reading, was Saint Ignatius of Antioch one of them?
It was, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think, for me, Ignatius was very important. I think Cyril of Jerusalem's catechetical lectures and seeing the deep rootedness of this entrance into the mysteries was really significant for us. St. John Chrysostom on the priesthood was very significant for me, at least. But it was a crisis of conscience. That's the point I was making about lying awake at night. It was awful. And I would approach the altar at my Lutheran church thinking, what am I doing? And they deserve a Lutheran pastor. And they didn't have that in me.
Got it.
Yeah.
Sheath Underwear has come aboard to sponsor the Counterflow podcast. How about that? At sheathunderwear.com/counterflow, or just go to sheathunderwear.com and use Counterflow at checkout for a discount. Men, do yourselves a favor. Elevate your daily comfort with Sheath Underwear. The innovative dual pouch design provides unparalleled support and separation, ensuring each part of you has the space it deserves. Experience the sophistication, finally, of a design that respects your anatomy. The moisture-wicking technology sets a new standard in comfort. This advanced system not only keeps you cool, which you need when you live in Texas, especially, most times of the year, but it prevents chafing, odor, making every movement feel effortless. So, once again, go to sheathunderwear.com/counterflow or use the promo code Counterflow at checkout. Experience the perfect blend of comfort and functionality with Sheath. What are some of the issues you see with inquirers, catechumens, converts, let's call it? What are some of the things, proclivities, let's say, that they have a hard time, let's say, getting rid of, or things that you see and it's like, look, here's an area you have to change your thinking, or something like that?
Yeah. It has changed in the last couple of years. I think if you asked me this 5 years ago, I would say, it's probably the veneration of icons. That's something that's a huge hurdle for people. They don't understand what's happening. Honestly, I would say in the last couple of years, it is coming free of the passions of the flesh.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with what happens in the temple. I mean, people come in and they still say, my grandmother, my mom's going to be upset. She doesn't know what we're doing here. She thinks we're worshiping idols,
Yes.
But I have found that men and women alike, the addiction to the internet, pornography, recreational drug use is a far bigger hurdle now for people, because you can love Orthodoxy all you want, but if you're not willing to give up those passions, or at least work on them, you're going to fall away. And it's so deeply ingrained. I mean, it's scary how bad it is. I worry for my own kids, and my kids are good kids, and people here are good people. But yes, I think it's not so much the theological hurdles. There are some, right? If you grew up a Baptist, and we say this is the offering of Christ's body and blood, okay, that's going to send off alarms in your head. But you can read for 2,000 years Christians talking that way and come to understand I'm entering a moving stream here. But really, the passions and the addiction to the internet and, like I said, pornography and just social media, to me, that's a much bigger hurdle right now with the people that are coming into the church at present.
Right.
Yeah.
What was the COVID period like for your church, for your parish, and things you saw coming in? Mm-hmm. And I'll let you get to this, but you were one of the great priests that did not close. But talk about that time.
Yeah. Well, I just saw this morning someone shared a picture that said 5 years ago today the world changed.
Yep.
So I think I think this is actually the anniversary of at least some event in COVID happening. It was. I was at the time I was a hospital chaplain actually, and so I had the medical side of things. They wanted us wearing masks, and people were terrified of getting this unknown virus. And at the same time, we had what St. Ignatius calls the medicine of immortality, so that you won't die. And these two things were conflicting. The world was terrified, and the church, in many instances, became terrified as well. I would say in this area, other than a very close kind of friend of ours, a local Russian monastery, in this area, I don't know of any other parishes that stayed open during COVID, except for us. And many, it wasn't just, well, you need to sign up and we can only have 20 people and we're going to do. For some of them, the bishops told the priests that they couldn't serve liturgy at all. And essentially that defrocks a priest for 6 or 8 weeks. Here we were very blessed. Our bishop was very pastoral. Even the patriarch was very pastoral, and essentially said, you follow the local laws as best you can. Obviously we want to be clean about things. So if you've got bathrooms, clean the bathrooms, things you'd normally do, right?
Yeah.
But we were very fortunate here that in Michigan, there was no mandate to close. They wanted people to close. They encouraged people to close, but they didn't fine you if you didn't close.
That's almost hard to believe. Was it Gretchen Whitmer? And
yes, exactly. And
I did not know
wonder
that.
You wonder what's all behind it. What, was she maybe had an eye toward mosques and synagogues? I don't know. Was that what she was thinking? We want to stay open. There's a heavy Muslim presence in Dearborn, just the city down from us. But yeah, we stayed open. Now, we didn't put a big sign out front saying we're open, come in here. But we served Pascha.
Beautiful.
We served communion the way we'd always served communion. Personally, I refuse to wear a mask. I'm not going to serve in the altar with the mask on, especially because, the prosopon, the person, is known by the face. And so all of a sudden, we're masking the way in which we are known to each other and known by God. We didn't require masking. Now, if people wanted to mask, they certainly could. Here, hardly anybody did.
You're a leader in your parish, and I'm so thankful that you're, as someone in leadership with your position, wearing a mask signals to people like, this is what you got to do, and it signals, in my personal opinion, a weakness, and even if it's slight, like some sort of disbelief in what you're doing. And
bingo. Yeah. It's funny because, in the Slavic churches, or I'll speak for the Russian church, keeping the doors closed on the iconostasis is very common. Yes. Other jurisdictions have different rules, but for us, they're closed except for at Pascha. But there were so many weeks I thought it'd be nice if we could open these doors so they could see me consuming the chalice after liturgy, to see that I'm not scared, because it is Christ's body and blood. And now we don't test God. We don't tempt God. If I would tell people, if you're very sick, stay home, rest up, get better, come back to church. But God is not going to destroy us in receiving the mysteries.
Right.
And if he does, it's his will. So that, that here we, like I said, we stayed open. I will say one additional thing, if it's okay if I keep talking about this, because
Absolutely.
St. John Maximovich was very important to us.
Yes.
Yeah. When I still remember, actually, it was a Sunday, must have been 5 years ago today. It happened to be a Sunday. And we had a deanery. So all the Russian parishes in my deanery in Michigan, we got together for Vespers on the Sunday of Orthodoxy. And that we had already heard there's this virus in China and it's coming, and be worried, but it hadn't come yet to the United States. That next week, everything began to fall apart in America. And we had been promised several months earlier from the late Metropolitan Ilarian of Rocor that we could have a relic of St. John of Shanghai in San Francisco. But of course, with relics, they typically don't mail those. You've got to go pick it up. And so we had, the time we were a very small parish, I think we'd had a pancake breakfast, raised some money for an airfare ticket, and our deacon was going to fly out there and pick up this relic. And I was so frustrated because these plans had been canceled and we couldn't buy a ticket and the ticket prices went up. But it was all in God's time, because when COVID happened, we had actually finally purchased a ticket for him to go out there. And as he came back on the flight, leaving Los Angeles LAX airport on a Saturday night, a red eye to come back Sunday morning, LAX shut down. Oh. And he's got the relic of St. John with him. Airport shuts down right after he leaves. And he comes back and we greet St. John at the main door of our temple. And mind you, we have about 40 or 45 relics in our temple. But this was one we really felt, for whatever reason, that St. John was going to be important to us. And from that day, I said, after every Sunday liturgy, as a parish, we're going to process around our temple outside with the relics of St. John. And to this day, we still do that. So 5 years later, 250 liturgies later. The reason I did that was because St. John, who of course traveled the world, spent time in the Philippines on the island of Tubabao. And the story, you probably have heard this, but the story goes he would go out at night and bless the island in 4 directions with an icon. This island was known for being decimated by typhoons. Never once was there a typhoon when he blessed the island. It was either the day or the week that they left that island, a typhoon decimated the island he had been on. So St. John protects us. St. John protects us in calamity. And it was my firm belief that St. John was brought here at that time to protect us during this COVID crisis. And so I really felt as though with the Lord and his mysteries and with the blessing of our bishop to be, good, lawful citizens, and with the presence of St. John, that nothing was going to harm us. And thank God it didn't. Did people get COVID? Yeah, through the years people have. Sure. It's like the common flu now, but nobody was hospitalized. Nobody died. I mean, we were very, very protected, I believe, because we were obedient to Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Great new sponsor, tigerfitness.com/counterflow. That's your code to get in, support my podcast, and fuel your resistance. We all talk about standing up to people, standing up to the man, all of these things. Well, you can't do it when you're a couch potato. And let's face it, it's not vanity. It's taking care of your body, your soul, your mind, all of these things. Tiger Fitness provides high-quality supplements and training gear to keep you strong, independent, and ready for whatever comes next. Again, no weak bodies, no weak minds. At Tiger Fitness, there are kind of people. They reject corporate poison. They skip the junk peddled by big box brands and pharma-backed fitness scams. Tiger Fitness is built for those who take control of their own health and strength. I think that's you. I think that's me. I think that's all of us, guys. Self-sufficiency starts with strength. The state, the bad guys, the evil spirits, they want you weak, tired, and dependent. Tiger Fitness helps you break free by optimizing your performance and resilience. Again, you can support a business that is supporting me, supporting this podcast, and it stands for you. No woke BS, no corporate virtue signaling, all of the stuff that we hate, these guys hate as well. And so they are not like that. When you want to get in shape, they've got workouts on this website. They've got a lot of supplements, great energy drinks, all of these things that I'm kind of a part of most days of my life. It's for serious people who value discipline, taking care of your own, your family, and your body, self-reliance, and all of these things. tigerfitness.com/counterflow. Did you have parishioners coming to you seeking counsel on should I get a shot or what should I do? I'm scared, or what was some of that like for you?
Yeah, I mean, we had parishioners coming to us. It was often college kids where the shot was going to be mandated.
Yes.
And we were in a little bit of a difficult spot because some places said, just get a letter saying that this is conflicts with your conscience. I was happy to write that letter. Some places actually wanted physical proof that your ecclesiastical authority, your bishop or whomever, had forbid you from receiving this vaccine. Well, that became more difficult because, the patriarch didn't write a letter forbidding everybody. So we had to be a little more nuanced with that. We had to sometimes send a second letter or a third letter. And if people decided to get the vaccine, that was their choice. They have free will and they could decide that. But I think most people chose not to get it. And if they didn't want it, we did work hard to get them some supporting documentation. But the world was crazy then.
Yes.
And God bless them. We didn't know then what we know now. But you had bishops getting it. And some of them, I understand, they were terrified of what might happen. And you had some being forced into getting it. Nothing good in the church happens by force.
Right.
And so even if I agreed or disagreed, and I think here we try very, very hard to not get into politics here. This is the kingdom of God.
Yes.
If people asked me, what's your opinion, I would tell them, but I wouldn't say to somebody, you're forbidden or you must, or it's up to you. But if they came to me and said, what are your thoughts? I'd share them. And if they would ask for a letter that I in good conscience could write truthfully, I was happy to do that.
Did those years and what happened in this country, and I guess you could say in the world, did that help create the explosion of people coming to your parish?
I think absolutely. Yeah. And I want to be in the business of helping people find orthodoxy who don't know orthodoxy. Doesn't do anybody any good if we're just moving people around from parish to parish.
Right.
But in that instance, when you have parishes completely shut down, or priests or bishops saying you cannot come 4 times a month, you can only come once a month, I had no qualms saying, if you want to come here and receive the mysteries, you can. We didn't advertise that. But yes, we have probably, I would say 2 or 3 families that in the midst of that, as one person said, I had Pascha on my computer at my dining room table. I'm never going to do that again. So yeah, we did have people from other parishes come. But again, at that time, that began the explosion of people that didn't know Christ or had forgotten about Christ, who said, the world is a mess. What is a traditional religious belief that I can uphold that will give me some order? And they found orthodoxy.
I think in some ways, how I saw some of this is the craziness that was happening from an atheist perspective flipped my worldview of sorts, because it was like, well, this is spiritual. Yeah. These people that I viewed as crazy and tyrants, this is spiritual for them. There is no doubt about it. Certain things were symbolic in nature. Yes. The shot seemed like their version of communion, and the mask seemed like a rosary or something. And it's like, what on earth? And I thought, I need to find this is evil spirituality. It's like good inverted into something masochistic. I need to find like beauty and truth and good theology and spirituality, and that's and through Christ and Father Seraphim Rose and people I had on my show, that helped. And lo and behold, I didn't know there was an Orthodox parish 5 minutes from my house in this small town of 13,000. So that was nice as well.
Yes.
And it seems like, for whatever reason, it seems like we've been given some sort of grace. And you don't have to get deep into politics here, but politically things have, it seems like this darkness has been lifted. Yes. And it seems like the quote unquote bad side, for lack of a better phrase, was so built on falsehood, lies, deception, manipulation of media, and fear mongering. Enough people saw through this finally to where the bad people, quote unquote bad people, lost. And it doesn't seem like they can't just come back with the same message, because that's gone. Yes. So what spiritual lessons are to be had from what we've seen and this kind of turnaround and maybe grace period we've been given, and people seeing through falsehoods?
Yes. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's almost as though the veil has been lifted. We can kind of see clearly what was really going on. I think the spiritual message is, now that the veil has been lifted, I believe there will be a temptation then for people to slow down. You know, in the church, slow down your maturity. like we talked about before we came on, people saying, I really want to visit an Orthodox church, but it's not the right time. If people are terrifying you or telling you lies, it's the right time. So my worry is, now that the veil has been lifted, does all of this momentum slow down? We've got to keep it, because the minute we think the devil has relented, he will come back with a stronger attack.
Yes.
And I do, as much as I'm with you, I want wars to stop. I want Ukraine and Russia to be at peace. Mm-hmm. I went to the Holy Land. I served in the Holy Sepulchre twice 2 years ago. I want to go back. We need peace. But when we have it, what are we going to do with it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have to ask you about, I'm a firefighter. I never say for which city because I can't, mm-hmm. but I'm close with one of the gentlemen who was a chaplain for us. Mm. What was your time like as a chaplain? And was it for specifically one hospital? Was that your chaplain duties?
Yeah. So that's a great question. When I left the Lutheran denomination, I began teaching at a Catholic seminary. I think in the hopes that we were going to be Catholic. That was the plan. When that didn't pan out and we became Orthodox, it became pretty apparent pretty quickly that I was not going to be a good fit in a Catholic environment. And I was teaching church history. I was running a couple of master's programs, but I was about to be ordained an Orthodox priest. So at that time, I had to find something that I knew could help pay the bills, that would use the skills that God had given to me. And so I did formal chaplaincy training, what is typically called CPE, Clinical Pastoral Education. Very old program. I could say a lot of negative things about it, but in the long run, it was actually very positive. And I did that at the University of Michigan. So one of the largest level 1 trauma centers. And as a firefighter, level 1 trauma is gunshots and house fires and overdoses and all of that in this area. Probably one of the best hospitals in this area. So I did all of my training there. It's sort of set up with the terminology of medical training, so internship, residency. And I did all of that at U of M. And I was there about 2 years. And then I did the last 4 or 5 years, really until Holy Week last year, at St. Joseph Hospital, a large Roman Catholic hospital, level 1 trauma center, just down the road from the University of Michigan. The good news is the parish has grown enough that I don't need a second full-time job to support my family. But when I was there, I think I always had in my mind, being a hospital chaplain, was walking around and finding Grandma Schmidt, who's going to have surgery, and let's say a prayer, and there's a new baby, they would like a prayer. That was not it at all. First of all, it was as much staff care as it was people care. And it was also, the areas where I served was the emergency room and the surgical ICU. So I was dealing with the most critically ill patients, often traumatic injury, again, right on the edge of the Detroit area. So gunshots, stabbings, overdoses, and their families. And, looking back on it, I don't like to throw around PTSD a lot, but I can tell that those things did very much affect me. And I would go into a room where somebody had been shot to death, and I knew it was bad when that didn't affect me. You just got used to kind of seeing it. And you got used to the wailing mother, and you got used to the death. And I was willing to do it because it supported my family. But when I didn't need to do it, that was a blessing. So most of my work was in kind of those highly chaotic, very traumatic environments. But the job of a priest, as was the life of Christ, is to bring order amid the chaos. And I felt like I was in a very good position in terms of my skill set, my ordination, what I enjoyed, to be that kind of person. And I, even at the University of Michigan, which is one of the most liberal cities in America, Ann Arbor, I went dressed with a cassock and a pectoral cross every day. And they knew me as the Russian Orthodox priest. They had no issues, because whether or not I believed what they believed, they knew when I was there would be order and not chaos.
You were with people, I assume, as they were taking their last breath many times.
Yes.
What did you learn? Did that help deepen your faith? Did it help you as a priest? Did it help you as a man? Did it help you as a Christian? What were those times like? What lessons did you take?
Yeah, I think the first lesson is we need to prepare for death before we get there. Because I saw too many people who, if they were awake, had great regret at the time of death. And lots of family members who had great regret over broken relationships. So, it's sort of the urgency. It's like when we talk about Father Seraphim Rose and the departure of the soul from the body, or the toll houses. It's not meant to terrify us into just being scared. It's meant to push us to get things aligned now.
Yes.
And so, I saw that very concretely. I think the other thing that I came to realize very tangibly was what the church has always believed, that when a person dies, it's not like their soul just goes off immediately to some foreign place, but they are here, and you could feel their presence even though there might be a flat line on the monitor. And I think probably more than anything else, I learned that as someone was near death, especially the Orthodox Christians I took care of, helping people make a good confession is about the best work a priest can do in that setting. If they're ventilated and things like that, they can't eat, they can't drink, okay. But if you can help them, even by talking them through this, to see a soul shift from being terrified to being at peace is really a miracle and a tremendous gift. And it's something that, now people can come to me in the parish and say, you won't believe what happened. And there's really nothing that surprises me,
right?
Whether it be a traumatic event, a big sin, nothing. And I can talk from that experience. I'll say the last thing, and this is a bit off topic, but I think it fits. I also learned that, organ donation may not be the way Orthodox Christians want to live. Because I saw too many cases, and again, this might seem tangential, but I saw too many cases where a person had been an organ donor, and I felt like they were declared deceased or brain dead far too quickly. And again, we could go down a whole rabbit hole. That's not the point. But I saw some cases where, almost against the wishes of loved ones, a person was declared brain dead and quickly taken off for organ donation. Now, of their own free will, they had said they wanted to be an organ donor. But I would say for anybody that does listen to this, first of all, Orthodox Christians should really ask themselves if this is right. We typically don't donate our hearts because the heart is the center of man. But I told my parishioners here, I said, this is the one political thing I'll say. I would advise you to take your name off the donor registry. Now, if your family wants to donate when you died, you talk with them, you work it out. But I saw too many cases of really illicit, might be too strong, but immoral action near the time of death. And in a surgical ICU where someone's, run their motorcycle into a street sign.
Yes.
Young kid has great organs, right? Everything but his brain is probably working very well. I saw a lot of really upside down scenarios there.
That's something I've heard about throughout the years and never drilled down on learning more. So that's good to hear. Well, not good to hear. It's good to hear your advice, I should say, in lieu of what's happening.
Yeah.
Did you teach philosophy?
Yeah, enough to be dangerous. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I would. So I taught in the philosophy department at Purdue University in Purdue Northwest, which is a satellite university of Purdue. And I often would teach ethics courses. And interestingly, they were often ethics courses for nursing students. It was kind of a side job as I was coming out of Lutheranism. Yeah.
Is there, let's say, healthy, productive to be learned from overlap between philosophy and Christianity?
Absolutely. I think understanding, the way the mind works, the way we sift through questions that are of eternal significance and our existence. I think philosophy and some philosophers can be very helpful in that. Even thinking about the nature of humanity from more of an intellectual perspective. I think the difficulty is that, at least for the Western mind, that tends to be our default.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to look at things from this perspective, not from this perspective. And I find that even, we talked about catechesis, even at the level of catechesis, Sometimes people will come in and say, what book should I read?
Yes.
And my answer is, look in these doors to the temple. That's the book you need to read. And clearly there is an intellectual component. We're going to give you the teaching of the church. But when I was a Lutheran, you would have somebody read a book called the Catechism. And if they agreed with that, you'd make them a Lutheran. But as an Orthodox Christian, it's not always if you agree with all of it. Is it that Christ is drawing your life in this direction, and you want to grow further in Christ? So it's as much about the heart, the mind of the eye of the soul, as it is about the mind. Yeah.
My godfather, as I was a catechumen, there's certain books that we get to learn about the faith. But he said, this isn't on that list, but it's on my list for you. And I'm telling you, you have to read it. And it was letters from Father Seraphim.
Oh,
because he said, I want you to understand that this Orthodox faith is not mental. And just watch what Father Seraphim says in his letters. And I think you'll understand everything was from his heart. And it was an invaluable read. And now speaking of invaluable, it's very valuable apparently because it's very expensive on Amazon now. But I don't know what happened there.
Well, and I think to speak of Father Seraphim, one thing I always appreciated about him, and they've commented on him in his life, is that he is this philosophical mind, right?
Yes, right.
But as he grows in his monastic life and as a spiritual father, he actually speaks to people far more simply than he did when he was a philosopher. And it's that ability to take very complex ideas and simplify them that I believe is the true mark of spiritual genius, as you will. And so, I'll often say to my wife, the smartest day I ever had was the day I defended my dissertation. I knew every line of that text. But I think part of it is also you get comfortable with speaking about very complex things in very simple ways because it's for the heart to comprehend, not the mind.
Yeah, well said. What are some pitfalls? Well, let me ask you this before I get to that. Are the demographics of the people coming to your parish now, it seems like we discuss this a lot. It's a lot of young men. Is that the case at yours, or is it families? Is it women?
Yeah, for a while it was all young men, typically single men. I would say in the past year or two, it's been a lot of families with young kids. Some have simply relocated from out of state and have heard about the parish and connected with us and moved in this area. But no, it's a lot of, we have 5 moms right now, 4 minus my wife who are pregnant right now. And so in a little parish, that's a big number.
Yeah.
But people coming, for example, a young couple, they're pregnant, they come here, they tell their dad, this is a great parish, dad comes. So now you've got extended family coming. I would say it's more situations like that, young people who are together inviting their friends, as opposed to just sort of the influx of young men like I think we saw right after COVID.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are pitfalls that are common for young families entering the church to encounter?
Well, I think the pitfalls are biting off more than you can chew.
Okay.
And again, sometimes this is often led by the husband, although in our parish, it sometimes is motivated by the wife's piety. But, coming in and thinking that within 1 week, our house is going to be transformed into a domestic church and we're going to not eat meat and dairy and all of that for the entire fast. And I'm going to pray 3 or 4 hours a day. There's a great temptation there. It doesn't mean it's inherently bad. There are lots of things that are neutral or even good, but can be misused. And so if their heart is not ready for that, the Psalms say, my heart is ready, O God. If their heart is not yet ready, that will actually do more damage to them than good. And so I think it's for young families who are eager. And like we've talked about, they finally have garnered the courage to come. You remember and I remember, we may have gone more quickly than they do now, but it takes a lot of courage to say, I'm going to a church that one has Russian in the title.
Yes.
I don't know what they're going to speak. There are no pews.
Yes.
There were pews when I came here, but 35 of them went out for cleaning and didn't come back. You walk into a place and you say, this looks totally different. It smells different. There are all of these images. There are pieces of bones of these people that they call holy. It is an overwhelming experience. But once you garner the courage to do that, you want to jump in with both feet. And I'm very cautious with our catechumens, especially the families, to say, listen, you're still a mother, you're still a husband, you're still a father, and you need to pray not like a monastic, but like a husband and a father and a mother and a wife. And so we work on prayer rules that are very manageable. Maybe it's 10 minutes in the morning. Maybe it's not the whole Jordanville morning prayer set.
Right.
Because yesterday you were doing yoga. 2 weeks ago, you were getting lattes and taking your kids to school. And now you're expected to pray all these prayers. So I think the biggest pitfall is don't operate too quickly. But a longer catechumenate allows you to work into that kind of thing. So my rule here is, unless I think you've got some remarkable spiritual strength, probably it's going to be a year or two before you're going to fast a total fast like the Orthodox Church does.
You ever get any young men coming in and saying, as an inquirer, you start speaking with them, they're interested, and then before you know it, they say, Father, I'm ready to be a monk. I think that's the life for me. Do you get that ever?
Yeah. Well, yes, absolutely. They get, the telltale sign to me is they come in, they're by themselves, they've been very eager, and all of a sudden, 3 or 4 weeks in, they've got a prayer rope that's 500 knots long. And I'm thinking, what is happening right now? And believe me, I am, at least I think in this area, one of the more traditional priests. So I don't disparage the Jesus prayer, but these are weapons, right? And I think they believe monastic life is sort of this glorious, I'm going to be praying all day. And to be quite honest, I've had a couple of men here that have expressed that interest. And so we have a local Russian monastery near us. I'm very close with the abbot. He's the confessor for my family. And a couple of them, I've said, you know what, let's set up a time for you to go. And the first one I sent last year during Clean Week. He said, Father, I didn't eat for a week.
I bet, yeah.
I was given a concession. I could have a peanut butter sandwich at night. And it's not at all what I thought it was. And so I think sometimes, okay, you want to go? Let's go. Let's go see what it's like.
Yes.
And they realize very quickly, it's not like the videos of Mount Athos.
Right.
Yes.
And having been to Mount Athos, I can tell you, anyone listening who thinks that it is easy, it is not easy.
No.
Even going there and being a part of it, not easy. But the lives that those great men live is special, and it's not easy. Let's just put it that way.
Absolutely. Yeah.
In closing, since we are, as we record this, speaking of Clean Week, as this drops, it will be after the Sunday of Orthodoxy. That's this coming Sunday. Yeah, Triumph of Orthodoxy. We are in Great Lent. Any reflections in closing here on Great Lent for anyone in the audience? A lot of them are Orthodox, some are inquirers, some are Protestant, but just what it means to us and things to think about as we enter this time.
Yeah, I think if you are Orthodox, don't neglect the services. And here I'm very grateful that the people here trust me as their priest, and the expectations are high. We play at the highest common denominator, not the lowest. We're not going to work at the level of the weakest person. So take advantage of them. Go to the services every week. Go to the pre-sanctified liturgies, especially as we approach Holy Week in 5 or 6 weeks. Make use of those services. So I would say to the Orthodox Christians, don't come on Sundays and wait for Pascha. Journey with Christ. Walk with Christ. Spend time stay with me. He says to his disciples, stay with me. You can't stay awake for an hour? Go and do what even they struggled to do. I think for the catechumens, now's the time to be doing a thorough examination of your life. And if you're going to be brought in on Holy Saturday, for example, as we do here, or Lazarus Saturday, now's the time to go to your icon corner. And I forget who kind of gave this model for a life confession, but it's very, very helpful, I found. Think back to your earliest memory. Maybe it was 5, maybe it was 7, and work back from there. What are the major things in your life where you knew you had a broken relationship with God, your family, your loved ones, your friends, and start writing those things down and make a good confession before you come into the church. And I think for inquirers, I would say, my wife likes to say, you know what it is to be an Orthodox Christian by listening to the funeral service. The second thing you listen to is the Lenten cycle. And so if you're an inquirer and you want to know what do the Orthodox believe, frankly, this week, Clean Week, is one of the best with the canon. It's all out of the scriptures. But all of Lent shows you really what it is that we believe as Orthodox Christians. And it's this, that we are prodigal sons and daughters, and God, he's not chasing after us, but he's waiting for our return. The son comes back, he comes to his senses, he begins his walk back, and as St. Luke says, when he saw him, he was a long way off, and he runs to him. So the Father is waiting for us just to make the first move back. And as the scriptures say, draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. So if you're Orthodox, come to the services. A catechumen, be working on your confessions. Inquirer, everything you want to know that what the Orthodox Church believes, teaches, and confesses, it's in these services.
One more before we get out of here.
Yes.
Saints, favorite lives of saints, or favorite almost sounds so modern. Most impactful reading of saints' lives for you? You mentioned St. Cyril of Jerusalem. I assume that's one.
Yeah, that is absolutely one. I mean, I've been very much drawn to the Russian New Martyrs. I think in part because America looks strikingly similar to Russia of that era. And so, if you want an example for how to live in the midst of tyranny, this is your model. I will also say that St. John, of course, St. John of Shanghai and San Francisco he's become, I don't want to say a dear friend because that means we're equals. He's become a dear father, spiritual father. I would also say, in the last year, we received a relic of St. Porphyrios of Gaza, who is, buried at St. Porphyrios Cathedral on the Gaza Strip. It's one of the oldest churches in the entire world. We received that from the abbot of this monastery. He received a much larger portion of this relic because they were afraid the Zionists were going to bomb the cathedral. And this is a way to preserve part of these relics. And St. Porphyrios, just the antiquity of the relic and the story behind the cathedral and what those Christians are suffering there has become a real blessing and a blessed presence in our temple. So I would say new martyrs, huge. St. John Chrysostom. And the more I learn about this, the life of St. Innocent of Irkutsk, our own patron, died at a young age, not because he was martyred, he died because he was exhausted and in ill health. And there are days when I think good, hardworking parishioners and priests feel that way. What am I doing this all for? And you see St. Innocent that it may not be this year or next year, but in 200 years, it'll pay off.
One more. Sorry.
Yes, go ahead. No, we've got all day. Go ahead. Yeah,
okay,
no worries.
You keep saying things that get my mind working. I don't know that this, in my personal experience, is not an issue, but if it were, or has it been one, an inquirer or a catechumen coming to Orthodoxy with a presupposition of Zionism, and why does it have to, and if so, why does that have to be rooted out before you become baptized?
So the short answer is yes, I have had people come like that. And I think it varies by probably, what your background is. Zionism is incompatible with Christianity, period. Not to get too far into the weeds, but the people of Palestine were kicked out of their own land. And I believe, and we've prayed fervently at every divine liturgy. So we're a Russian church. Patriarch Kirill is my patriarch. Bishop Matthew is my bishop. But at every divine liturgy, we remember Metropolitan Unfree of the Canonical Church in the Ukraine, various bishops who are overseeing the Kiev Caves Lavra, for example. We also commemorate his beatitude, Patriarch Theophilus of Jerusalem, and Metropolitan Alexios, Archbishop Alexios of Gaza. Those people are on the verge of extinction. And we are, in many respects, their only hope for prayers and their only hope for financial support. Having been to Jerusalem, and I will admit, growing up in the Protestant church, I was under the mindset that this land belonged to the Jews. And I think there are many people of goodwill who believe that. It's not like you're a bad person. But once you go there, I don't think you can leave and say that is true. And so even when I was there before the war began, driving from Jerusalem down to the Jordan, for example, the Palestinian people are essentially in concentration camps. There are high fences. They can't get medication. They can't get electricity. Some are maybe very well off. I don't know. But having heard the stories of the people in Gaza, it is genocide, what's happening. And I think we need to be careful about what we say publicly, because we can very easily fall into sort of a Zionist trap. There are many, believe me, there are many good Jewish people. I don't doubt that at all. But they are being obliterated, the people of Gaza. And they are the ancient people there. They are the Christians who have been moved out of Jerusalem, who have been moved down to Gaza. And if you listen to anything on the news, they even want to move them out of there.
Yes.
So it's a very tough situation.
Yes. Amen. Well said. Anything to plug?
Boy, I think I would just say, I'd say two things. I'll plug, my own parish, which is if you're in the Detroit area, come see us here at St. Innocent in Redford. I often say, a parish needs to have reverent liturgy, which I think we do. It needs to have robust catechesis, which we do. And it needs to have a real sense of family. I think I talk about the 3 R's. Those 3 things make a parish vibrant and alive. I often find parishes have maybe one of those: great family life, great, lunches, bad liturgy, and no catechesis. I'm always amazed at how many people can become Orthodox with very little to no catechesis.
Yes.
So we have that here. Lots of young families. We take the faith very seriously. It really is a matter of life or death, literally. So come. I think the second thing I'll plug is just to say, continue to pray for the peace of Jerusalem and for Gaza and for the Ukraine and for Russia. These are our brothers and sisters, and we can get so caught up in our own troubles here, which are bad, but it's not like there. So we need to continue to pray for the peace of Jerusalem, of the Ukraine, and of Russia.
Right. Amen. Father Joshua, thank you so much for doing this. I definitely want to get you back. This has been fantastic.
Wonderful. It's been a great time, and we'll do it again soon, hopefully.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. God bless.
What a great guest. I really enjoyed that discussion. Hope you guys did too. Go give his website a gander and see his beautiful church and the stuff they've got set up. The little outside shrine to St. John, of course, is beautiful. As for this show, subscribe to the YouTube page, if you will, so you'll be notified of when these happen. You can follow me on X at BuckRebel, BuckRebel. You can join our Telegram group for the Counterflow Podcast. There's always good stuff going on in there. I hope y'all are having a blessed Lent, an edifying Lent. Struggle beautifully. And next week, we have an old friend returning to the show. We are going to discuss the death of the legacy media. R.I.P. Charlie Robinson's going to be back on the show. Always a fun chat, and I very much look forward to that. Until then, friends, y'all have a good one. See ya. Like the sound of the Counterflow Podcast? Our audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.
This has been